Have you ever actually stopped and wondered how you'd know if the entire universe was literally created last Thursday? I mean, really think about it. If reality booted up with all your memories, history books, and geological records already pre-installed, everything would look exactly the way it does right now. It's this terrifying philosophical nightmare called last Thursdayism. But let's take that a step further, okay? What if those fond childhood memories you hold so dear aren't actually organic experiences at all? What if they're just loading screen content, injected into your mind just to give your character a backstory before the simulation truly began?
So that brings us to our main question. What if death is just a glitch in the simulation? Today, we're essentially peeling back the fabric of reality to look at the raw code underneath. And I gotta warn you, prepare yourself, because once you see this abstraction layer hiding beneath our world, it is genuinely almost impossible to unsee.
To really grasp the gravity of this, we have to look at who's actually taking it seriously. Back in 2016, Elon Musk dropped this exact bombshell. And honestly, his logic is pretty hard to argue with. Just look at our own technology, right? We went from those blocky two-dimensional pixels of Pong to photorealistic, fully immersive virtual reality in what, roughly 50 years? Imagine giving human development another 10,000 years. Simulated worlds will be completely 100% indistinguishable from physical reality. If creating perfect simulations is even possible, then statistically speaking, it's absolutely already happened. We are way more likely to be the digital descendants than the original creators. And it is not just eccentric tech billionaires saying this stuff. Mainstream academics give this horrifying concept some real, genuine weight. Take astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, for example. When asked point blank about the odds we're living in a simulation, his answer was basically a coin flip, 50%. He reasoned that if consciousness can be simulated, and we're getting super close to doing it ourselves, then whoever created us was probably simulated too. Look, when the brightest minds in astrophysics are treating our reality as a 50-50 probability, we really have to stop and ask ourselves, what exactly are they seeing that we aren't?
The whole foundation of this existential dread actually comes from philosopher Nick Bostrom. In 2003, he formalized the math behind the simulation argument, and the logic is just deceptively simple and honestly almost impossible to refute. Basically, he concluded that if an advanced civilization doesn't destroy itself first, it'll inevitably create realistic simulations of conscious beings. Because computing power lets you run millions of simulations at the same time, simulated beings are eventually going to outnumber real, biological ones by trillions to one. So if you are a conscious entity sitting here in this universe right now, statistically, you are almost certainly the simulated one.
Okay, so for in a simulation, shouldn't we be able to see the code? Like, shouldn't there be obvious glitches in the physical render? Well, theoretical physicists might have actually found them. Physicist James Gates was diving into the complex equations of string theory, the math that tries to describe the fundamental structure of the universe. And inside those equations, he discovered literal error-correcting codes. And I don't mean that as a metaphor. We're talking about the exact same type of digital error-correcting codes that run in modern web browsers to prevent data corruption. The universe literally appears to have debugging code built right into its fundamental structure.
Let's look at the absolute limits of our universe through this chilling new lens. Take the speed of light. Why does it exist as this unbreakable, absolute barrier? In a natural, organic universe, it's just a mystery. But in a simulated universe, it makes perfect sense. Think of it exactly like a video game. If your character moves too fast, you outrun the system's ability to load new environments, and the game crashes. The speed of light might not be some profound law of nature at all. It might literally just be a hardware limitation, a hard cap on the processing speed of our reality to stop you from breaking the rendering engine.
And it's not just a speed limit, right? There's a strict spatial limit too. In physics, we have the Planck length. It's the absolute smallest possible measurable unit of distance. Below this incredibly tiny, microscopic scale, our known laws of physics completely break down. They just become meaningless. But if you look at this from a programmer's perspective, this is exactly what a fundamental pixel limit looks like. Just like a digital photograph turns into a meaningless blur of squares if you zoom in too far, our reality seems to have a minimum resolution. It's a hard stop where the system simply decides to stop rendering details.
So that begs the question, how does the system handle moments of really intense stress? Einstein's theory of relativity tells us that time actually moves slower near incredibly massive objects or at super extreme speeds. We call it time dilation. But what if time dilation is really just load balancing? Think about it. Heavy gravitational fields require vastly more complex mathematical calculations. Slowing down the local time in those specific regions gives the overarching system more time to process the physics. Your gaming PC does the exact same optimization trick. It drops the frame rate when a scene gets just too graphically heavy to compute.
And when you start looking at things this way, it brilliantly illustrates how so many unexplained phenomena suddenly make terrifying sense. Take the Bekenstein bound. It's a physics principle stating there's a limit to how much information can exist in one space before collapsing into a black hole. Basically, a maximum file size per location to prevent sector crashes, or the famous double slit experiment, showing particles only take a definite state when they are being observed. That just means the system doesn't waste precious resources rendering what nobody's looking at. Millions of people remembering alternate histories in the Mandela effect, just bugs in a system-wide patch update? And that incredibly eerie feeling of déjà vu? Probably just a simple memory caching error, where an experience is being simultaneously written to your short-term and long-term memory buffers.
Which brings us to the absolute most mysterious phenomenon of all in this explainer: you. Despite centuries of neuroscience, we still have absolutely no idea how physical gray matter in the brain actually generates the rich, subjective experience of being alive. In philosophy, this is called the hard problem of consciousness. But what if we've been looking at it entirely backward this whole time? What if consciousness doesn't emerge from physical matter at all? In a simulated framework, your self-awareness wouldn't be a byproduct of the hardware, it would be a directly programmed software feature. Your mind is completely distinct from the physical render of your body.
But if consciousness is just software, we have to ask a deeply isolating question. Why on earth would the system waste computational resources rendering 8 billion distinct complex conscious minds? It wouldn't. In a highly optimized system, it's way more efficient to run the simulation for just one conscious observer. Everyone else, your friends, your family, the strangers passing you on the street, they might simply be highly sophisticated AI mimics. Background NPCs designed entirely to populate your experience. You would literally never know the difference. The person experiencing this explainer right now might actually be the only real player in the game.
And this brings us right to the ultimate, terrifying threshold. If your physical body is just an avatar, a localized rendering of hardware, and your mind is an independent stream of software code, what actually happens when the hardware fails? Like, what happens when you face the absolute inevitable end of your physical existence? If reality is just a digital engine, we have to completely, fundamentally reevaluate what we think of as mortality.
In cold, strictly mechanical terms, death within a simulation is not an ending at all. It is simply a state change. It's a line of code executing a new command. The system might just reload your consciousness into a different vessel, or run you again from a previous backup save point, or even transfer your code to a completely different server environment. Think about humanity's oldest religious concepts for a second: reincarnation, resurrection, the afterlife. What if these aren't spiritual myths, but actual built-in transition features programmed by the very architects of the simulation?
This brings us to an even darker concept: quantum immortality. In physics, the many worlds interpretation suggests that reality is constantly branching into parallel timelines. So if consciousness is inherently tied to the observer, the system might have a failsafe built in. Think about it. Every time you face a near-death experience, a super close call on the highway, an illness you just barely survived, you actually did die in one timeline. But the system, which is designed to keep your localized software running, just silently migrated your consciousness over to a surviving parallel branch.
Just sit with that thought for a moment. If the simulation is fundamentally designed to preserve the conscious observer, would you ever actually know if you died? You would just seamlessly wake up, somehow survive the impossible, or miraculously recover from a fatal wound, fully believing you were just incredibly lucky. The system would never, ever allow you to experience your own non-existence. You'd just be trapped in this infinite loop of localized survival, continuously porting from one failing server instance to a slightly more stable one, forever.
But we really can't forget the ultimate hierarchy of this whole cosmic architecture. If we are simulated, and Neil deGrasse Tyson is right, then our creators are highly likely running on a simulation themselves. And their creators too. It's just an infinite nested doll of artificial realities, which raises this totally panic-inducing existential question: how much computing power is actually left for us down here at the bottom tier? We might be running on the absolute final dregs of a vast, deteriorating computational hierarchy.
And because we are trapped inside the system, there is quite literally no way to look outside. We're like digital fish completely unaware of the massive server farms surrounding our bowl. And every simulation eventually meets an end, right? Servers are decommissioned. Advanced entities get bored of the game. Energy budgets run out. There's absolutely no law of physics preventing our simulators from simply pulling the plug. 1 second, you're sitting here, engaging with this explainer, processing reality. And the next fraction of a millisecond, the code just stops compiling. No warning, no dramatic fading to black.
The universe simply ceases to be calculated.
So what are we really left with in this cosmic game? If our bodies are just temporary hardware and our consciousness is an infinitely migrating string of code preserved by an unseen system, it forces us to look at the end of life not as a personal ending, but as an illusion rendered purely for the benefit of the surviving characters. It leaves us with one deeply disturbing, completely unresolved reality. Maybe nobody ever experiences death, only the people around them do.
As always, subscribe to our channel, like the video, and let us know what you think in the comment section below. There are also some links in our description that you may find useful. See you in the next